problem is that we're not
Blacks
telling
here in
the
this
truth.
city have made significant
earlier
contributions.
in life than we ever have.
Welcome to Minority Focus. I'm your host, Jimmie Moore. We really appreciate your watching and hope that most of the topics, or for that matter, all of the topics that we have to discuss and the guests that we have are things that you would like to hear about. And if not, our website flashes from time to time on the screen. Don't hesitate to give us a call if you have any suggestions as to topics or things of interest that you'd like to see presented on Minority Focus. Visiting with us today is Trudy Barnum, who is a disabled veterans outreach specialist. I had to practice that for about a half an hour.
So
Welcome,
did I.
Trudy.
Thank you.
It's good to have you.
It's good
It's
to
really
be
good
here.
to have you. Very rarely I meet someone in the course of my day-to-day that I know instantly will be a good candidate for coming on Minority Focus, and you're really one of them. Really
Thank
glad
you.
to have you. I know that you do a very important service to the veterans of Paducah, and the rest of the show is yours. I'm not going to say another word. Tell us what you do, Trudy. Trudy.
My job is, as we call it DVOP, Disabled Veterans Outreach Program Specialist. My job is to assist veterans with service-connected disabilities find employment. And I work with veterans that do not have any service-connected disabilities. It's just that my focus is on those that do have disabilities. And I do a lot of different things in that respect. Probably the first and foremost is I am an additional set of eyes and ears for a veteran who's looking for employment. So when a veteran comes in to the Career Center here in Paducah, most people know it as the Employment Center or the Unemployment Center, but we prefer to think of ourselves as the Employment Center. When a veteran comes in, the veteran has priority of service. In fact, it's a federal law that veterans are seen just as quickly and kind of go to the head of the line, so to speak, with whatever their needs are. And when one is looking for employment, if there are a couple of people that in Paducah that the veteran can see. One is Jean Burgess, who is a veterans representative who works with veterans for employment, and the other person is myself. And we can sit down with them. We, first of all, make sure that they're registered in the system so that they have access to look at. It's usually over 1,000 jobs that we have at any one time, right. And that are registered, that are online, that they can actually apply to or see if they qualify. So we make sure that they're registered. We get a good work history, find out what their skills and abilities are, find out what kind of work they're looking for, get their education, and all of those minor details, and make sure that they're in the system. And then we can actually do computer job searches. There are wonderful, very strong programs that can go in and take the information that the veteran has provided and go into the system and search for jobs that the veteran's qualifications fit. Right. And then we can notify the veteran if that individual is in front of us. We can actually call them or email them, get in contact with them, and say, hey, we've got some job leads for you to follow up with.
Right. The disabled part of it, the disabled veteran, does that, see, how do I say this? Does disabled range from point A to point and everything in between? Like there's a 10% disabled veteran, 100% disabled veteran, across the board.
Across the board.
Disabled is disabled.
It's very interesting. In most cases, a veteran with a service-connected disability can do almost any job that's out there. The service connection does not necessarily keep them from performing many, many different types of jobs. In some rare cases, it's more a severe disability and so that there may be some limitations. And my job is to assist the veteran with finding resources to help this individual overcome any issues there are that are interfering with their ability to work. So that, and this is a good time to bring up many of the resources that are available at the Career Center. Every Career Center in the state of Kentucky is called a one-stop center. And the reason for that is that there are many resources located at these career centers, not just for veterans, but for everyone, every job seeker that comes in. Now, there are certain qualifications for different things, but basically all this stuff is available for almost everyone. For instance, as well as veteran services, at the Career Center, there are the Kentucky State Vocational Rehabilitation Services. So people who are on, for instance, Social Security disability or a SSI or have a significant disability and aren't veterans may indeed qualify for that program, and they'd come in and speak to someone who worked in vocational rehab for the state. And some veterans also qualify for that program.
I know the jobs being out there that people can do. A disability may hinder, but not stop or prevent
Yes.
a disabled person from doing, a certain kind of job. How apt are employers to take those people on?
It's a very good question, and the answer is it depends on a great many factors. It depends on the extent of the disability and how much it interferes with their ability to do the job. There are different programs that are out there to assist employers in hiring people who are disabled. And for instance, there are the vocational rehab for the state has some of those programs. The Kentucky State Office for the Blind, who also has a presence at the One Stop, they have programs to assist individuals who are blind and to assist the employers in setting up the workspace so they could hire someone, for instance, who had vision problems. Maybe they're not entirely blind, or maybe there's some issues there. There's a lot of different things. Another factor is it depends on the employer. It depends on how the individual feels about the disability, the particular type of disability. And I think the biggest concern is this going to interfere with getting the job done? Right. And that's something, obviously, that I'm there to assist with in finding resources for the veteran to overcome any problem or any disability that's causing issues with the job search. And it's also something that we work with in terms of educating the employer.
Right. A veteran comes to you and they have a 30-40% disability, whatever. Mm-hmm. There's a name for whatever that disability is, a description of what it is. But before they're considered for a particular kind of job, is there an assessment of sorts that's done? Is there someone they have to see? Or do you assess them? Or how does that work?
Usually there's not an assessment made when they come to see me. I am their job coach. I am a person who seeks out resources for them. An assessment may be made elsewhere with a particular agency or a particular group that's working with the veteran. For instance, if I see a veteran that comes in and may indeed qualify for vocational rehabilitation with the VA, and that's something that I hadn't had a chance to mention yet. I can set them up, help them fill out an application for that program. The application then goes to the Veterans Administration. They are scheduled, and if they qualify, there's some criteria for that. If they qualify, then they're scheduled for an assessment by the vocational rehabilitation VA representative here in this area, who is Richard Snook, and he can do those types of assessments. So he can assess what their needs are, what their skill levels are, all kinds of things. I
know back in the day, I won't say how far back, but I attended West Kentucky Vocational School, the old West Kentucky Vocational School, and there were a number of Vietnam veterans taking courses there, and in hearing their conversations sometimes, they were being helped financially to take those courses with the books and what they call a stipend to help with other things. Is that still a part of the
That's
program?
part of the VA vocational rehabilitation, it sure is. And it's also part of the state vocational rehabilitation if they happen to be in that program.
Right.
Now, not every veteran qualifies for those programs. Obviously, there's a wide range, like you were saying earlier, of disability and a wide range of different skill levels and so on. But there's more programs available. For instance, the Workforce Investment Act. There's for workers that are displaced due to a plant closing, a company shuts down, or there's not enough work and they're laid off for that reason. Then there are funds that are available frequently, not always, but frequently, for them to get some more education or some training in a different field. In fact, WKCTC has been one of our partners with that through the Office of Employment and Training, and to set up specific programs and training that address some, for displaced workers, for people who had been laid off.
Right. From the number of people who come to see you, or that you're in touch with as far as a job and what have you is concerned, is what you do fairly widely known?
Actually, that's a very good question. No, it's not, because it's my position is a relatively new position. I've been at the job less than 6 months. And prior to that time, we did not have a DVOP, a Disabled Veterans Outreach Program Specialist, in this area. There was one in Eastern Kentucky, or several in Central and Eastern Kentucky, but none out here. So I was hired to come out here and sort of start getting out and doing a lot of outreach and finding out if it's really needed out here, if my services are needed. So I actually go all over Western Kentucky. I go down to Mayfield and Murray and Fulton and Benton, just parts everywhere. I've got, there's a career center down in Mayfield and one in Murray, and I frequently borrow a desk or have a desk down there where I meet veterans. And so, as well as setting appointments and meeting with veterans who may need my assistance with their job search, I go out and actually do what's called outreach and look for veterans. Go in and talk to businesses and hang flyers out, post flyers, and say, if you know of anyone who's a veteran who's looking for job services, give us a call.
Right.
We're here to help.
Well, there used to be a truck, a traveling van, if you will, that would schedule certain days of a month, certain days of a week, or whatever, that people could come that weren't familiar with the services that were available. That doesn't happen anymore, I don't think.
We don't have that. That sounds wonderful.
I've not seen that in a while, but it was something that you would read about occasionally that you could go to. In the short time that you've been here, has your workload or caseload increased? Are people picking up on you?
It is picking up. One of the things that I have done is pull up a list of the veterans that are already registered for employment in the system and identified the ones that have service-connected disabilities, and then actually contact them personally. I call them and leave messages if I don't get them on the phone, and follow up with an email if I don't hear from them, and in some cases even letters, just to let them know that this service exists and that I'm here for them. And the personal contact makes a difference.
I know the unemployment office is a familiar place to a lot of people, and that's how most people will quickly know where you are. But the address is 416
416 South. I had to use my cheat notes.
That's okay. Having not been here very long, forgive me.
I know how to get there, but to repeat the address.
But they're not to be confused in that that is where you go. The unemployment office.
The employment office.
The employment office is the bigger part of it. But
Yes.
there are other sections that function there in different ways, and your office being one of them. And there are counterparts to what you do there, aren't there? Are there other people that do other things involving disabled veterans too?
Well, I mentioned the vocational rehabilitation, and both the state side and the VA side of it. I mentioned some of the other programs that they could get involved in, the displaced worker program. I'm not quite sure where you're going with that. Just all of the services.
They're all there in that office.
Absolutely, and all of the services that are available to anyone who comes in are also available to the veterans. Right. And if what a veteran needs is not at the one stop, then what I do is start calling and trying to find resources, calling around and asking, where would I find thus and so? Where would I find this particular type of assistance for this veteran?
Right, and not so much a matter of course, you want someone to make an appointment to see you. The walk-ins aren't turned away.
Right.
This is where you get started, and you don't necessarily have to have 50 pages of history, credentials, and what have you. Most people ask for the DD-214, which tells everything. Is that the case? That's all you need to come into you?
To come in to see me,
Yes.
it's a good thing to have. I can help them without that. But if they're going to access any of the programs that cost money, for instance, like the VA vocational rehabilitation where they pay for schooling and books, they're going to need that DD-214. Right. But to come in for job services, essentially I take their word for it.
Right.
That
How
they're
successful
a veteran.
have you been so far?
I hope very successful. What gets tricky about that is that a lot of people, when they get a job, are immediately swept up in working and don't call and let us know that they're working. So I'll continue to send job leads, and I'll continue to call and say, hey, I've got this, so and so. And then maybe after a month or two, I get a call and say, oh, I've been working since January. I'm great. Where are you working? I tell them that way. So it is being successful. It's a tight job market right now. Mm-hmm. And the statistics don't come out for several months in arrears in terms of what the counting in the state that provides the statistics for this. So it's hard for me to tell you, for instance, how many people were employed last month because of my efforts. But one of the big ways I know is obviously anecdotal. When someone sends me an email or a phone call and saying I'm working, and then just seeing the number of people that show up that say, hey, so-and-so was telling me that you're here, and can we talk about the job search? Right. Can you help me find a job?
Of the jobs that come to you, employers out there are required somehow to report to you jobs that are available, whether it's for a disabled veteran or not. They have to let you know what jobs are available.
No.
No, not at all?
Employers are not required to register their jobs with us. But many of them do. And the reason they do is because we make it very easy for them. And we send them a lot of people who, one of the things about registering with us is the employer can tell us what they want in terms of qualifications, and we will pre-screen people for them. Mm-hmm. They can give us information, all kinds of information about the job, what the hours are. They may or may not tell us what they're willing to pay. They can tell us what shift it is, how many days a week, how many hours, all of the details about whether someone needs to be able to lift 50 pounds or whatever the criteria is. They can register that job online. We make it easy for them to do it that way. They can call. Now would probably be a good time for me to give the phone number for Paducah Career Center, and in fact, employers can call that number or job seekers can call that number, and that is 270-575-7000.
575-7000. Excellent. When it comes to the pay part of it, there's no differentiation in pay for the disabled person or anybody else that works a job. A job pays $10, period. Because a disabled veteran's coming to it, doesn't change anything about that at all.
Doesn't change a
Has
thing.
nothing whatsoever. That'd be against the law, like
Yes, it would.
discrimination against.
Absolutely, it's against the law. And in fact, most employers don't know that the veteran that they have hired may or may not have a disability. For instance, I'm a disabled veteran, and I don't think people can tell that by looking at me.
Oh, I knew it right away.
Oh.
No, it's not something that's visible, but for a lot of people, some of those things that a disabled veteran has to deal with as far as his disability, things that he's worked with a long time, made better, and has come to a position where he can function, whether the disability is physical or mental. He can absolutely function on the job. And I think one of the things that may be scary to a lot of veterans is that they think that's going to be a prerequisite to them getting a job, is what that disability is. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, it's like if my leg is broken, then I probably won't be able to get a job. They'll look at that first before I get a desk job. Although it doesn't matter, but they don't know particularly what the disability is. So just the word disability, sometimes.
They're worried that the employer is going to. How would the employer know? I don't tell them.
Exactly.
And none of the other workers at the Career Center tell the employers that. It's like having brown hair or blue eyes or whatever. We don't call an employer up or send him somebody and say, oh, but by the way, this person has brown hair.
Right.
We don't do it.
It's just the mere fact that they're disabled at a certain percentage by the military. World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, doesn't matter. Disabled veteran. You're working with people from all walks of the military, all branches of the military.
All ages.
And with all ages, and with all sorts of disabilities. And you're trained to do that. You have to be trained to do that. You're into the needs of certain kinds of disability. All that's well known to you. Are you familiar with it?
With certain kinds of disabilities?
Yes.
With some more than others. Basically, my job is not to be a psychological counselor or a doctor. Right. My job is to help them find employment. Right. So sometimes a veteran may be forthcoming with his or her disability, with what's going on. Mostly the kinds of questions I ask are you able to do, and then I'll read the requirements for a specific job. Are you able to do these things? Mm-hmm. And that's what I go on. We can take the case, for instance, of someone who has a significant or a severe disability. Those are the exception. Obviously, we don't see the percentage of those is much less than the general population. And these folks are different. For instance, the state vocational rehabilitation program, if they have some individuals who are facing some significant disabilities, they may indeed talk with the employer about, with the individual's permission, about the disabilities and what adjustments may need to be made for that individual. They may actually go and be a job coach for a while with that person. And there are some incentives for employers if they hire individuals with disabilities, and there are tax incentives for employers who hire veterans with disabilities. And they don't have to be significantly disabled. They can, you know, there's quite a bit of information about it on the IRS website, the www.irs.gov. It's interesting. I have that one memorized.
But even for people who might have significant disabilities, allowances and arrangements can be made for them. Whereas an employer may not know that this person is able to function okay in this certain area, or a tiny change here or a small change there. It doesn't change the job. It just makes it easier for the disabled veteran to do it. That goes on. That actually happens where employers are able to take care of things of that nature. It's excellent. Your ties with, I don't want to say the higher ups, but I mean the governing agencies in your job. Is the communication between you and them absolute, clear? What you say goes. You call them, they talk to you, you talk to them, and the disabled veteran is taken care of. Your word is good to those people. I don't want to say over you. Are you with me? I'm talking about your supervisor in Louisville, or wherever the headquarters is.
Actually, my supervisor's here in Paducah.
Is that right? I ain't gonna watch you, huh?
And well, and then I go to Murray and Mayfield, and my supervisor's still in Paducah, but there's a lot of trust built into that part of the system. There's a lot of communication that goes on between the Career Center here and the Office of Employment and Training in Frankfort and in Louisville. A lot of training that goes back and forth so that the people that work here to help individuals get employment are well trained. There's training every year we're required to go to. Right now we are in the middle of a bunch of strategic planning meetings. The veterans are across the state that work in the program, the veterans representatives, and we're all assigned to, and we got to choose them, to different strategic planning groups. And right now we are working out a lot of the details about how best to increase veterans' job placement, how best to reach veterans. And we're working statewide on that. And those of us that are down in the trenches, so to speak, doing the work with the veterans are the ones that are on these strategic planning groups. And so there's a lot, people do listen.
I understand. Trudy, we're out of time. And I'm always sorry about that because the subject
I had
is very
stuff
interesting.
I didn't get to cover.
You're there to help a lot of people, a lot you didn't get into. Hopefully we can have you back again in the near future and you can talk some more about it, because I know it's a lot of veterans out there that want and need to hear what you have to say. Really appreciate
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much for coming.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much. For Minority Focus, I'm Jimmie Moore.